Right, so I have my data set open, and this is car details from 2019. So it's just a bunch of information about different car models. And we want to organize this data into tables and graphs. So, what are some of the things you can do in StatCrunch? If you have qualitative data like yes, no answers, uh, this one, the drive, if it's front wheel drive, all wheel drive, etc. Those work well with bar graphs, pie charts, and frequency tables. So let's make a frequency table. So let's go to tables, frequency, and let's just pick sedan. And, I would leave this in terms of frequency and relative frequency. And you just get a simple table that it counts how many uh, data values of each type are there. So we have 152 no's and we have 70 yeses. And the relative frequency is this frequency divided by the total. So we've got 222 cars in our data set. 152 are not sedans. So that means it's about 68% are not sedans. Okay. Now, the same information could be had with a bar graph. So if I go to graph, bar plot with data, and I pick sedan, then I get a bar plot. Now, this is just the frequency instead of we're not getting the relative frequency, but we get those the same information in a bar graph. And if you click options and edit, you can do different things. You can give the graph a name, a title. You can label the axes. What I like to do is display the value above the bar. So if you click this check mark, you're going to get the actual frequencies listed above the bars, which I think is good. Okay. And then another option is a pie chart, especially with data like this, yes and no answers. So I'll click sedan and we get a pie chart of the no's and yeses, and it gives you the frequencies and the relative frequencies there. Okay, so that's good for, say, qualitative data. Now, if you have quantitative data, you can make some of the same graphs and tables, but it does matter somewhat if it's discrete or continuous. So let's look at seating. It's a discrete value. And if I make a frequency table, so stat tables frequency, and I pick seating, and I click compute, it will count how many of each seating capacity that you have. So you get all the frequencies here. We also get the relative frequencies. So we can see that most of the cars have seating for 5, right? 2 in the front, 3 in the back. And that represents about 71% of the cars in the data set, right? And I can make this same table in graphical form. Instead of a bar plot, though, we're going to choose the histogram. So the histogram is just a bar plot, but it's for quantitative data. Your x-axis will be a number line. Okay. So again, I'll choose seating, and I have the same information here that I have here, but just in graphical form. And if I want relative frequency, if I want to display that value above the bar, then I can change it. So now it looks the same, except the scale is different, right? Because now it's in relative frequency scale. So all these are between 0 and 1. And I've displayed the value above the bars. If you have data that's continuous, or there's just a lot of different data values, and there's not a lot of repeats, you'll want to bin the data. Okay, so let's pick a different one. How about horsepower? If I go to tables, frequency, and click on horsepower, so we get this error message. It says, wow, that's a lot of numeric values. Do you want to turn on binning? So if you choose no, if you click cancel, what happens is it counts every single data value, and you see there's not a lot of repeats, right? So this table would not be very useful. So instead, we're going to group the data values together into classes. StatCrunch calls them bins, right? So I'm going to redo this. If I click compute again, and this time I click OK on the error message, do I want to turn on binning? I'm going to say yes. Then you see it groups the data values together. So now I have a group that's 0 to 100 horsepower. There's 3 of those. 100 to 200, there's 68 of those, right? You see this is a much more usable table. Now let's say you wanted to define these yourself. You didn't want to use the same classes or bins that StatCrunch picked. Okay, so you can pick your own. So I'm going to go back to options and edit, back to this frequency table screen. And then here in the middle, it says, do you want to bin the numerical values? So you click that check mark, and the starting point is going to be this first lower limit of your first class, of your first bin. So what do you want that to be? So we'll set it to be the same, but now I'm going to change my width to, instead of 100, let's change it to 75. So we'll get a slightly different table this time. And now the bins are by 75 instead of by 100. You can see that we don't have the 0 to 75 because there actually weren't any cars with horsepowers below 75. So, we get a slightly different picture there. And when we make the histogram, the graph, we can do the same thing. So I'm going to click horsepower, and I'm going to tell it to bin, we'll start at 0 and have a width of 75. I want to display the value above the bar, and I get a histogram, which is a bar graph, but it's for continuous or discrete data, for quantitative data. So your x-axis is a number line, and we can see the shape of this data, right? We can see visually what it looks like. And it tells us, most of our horsepower is going to be between 150 and 375. So that's the biggest portion of our car's horsepower, right? And there are many other graphs that you should look at. We'll go over some more as I make more videos, but that's a good starting point. We want to organize our data into tables. We like frequency tables a lot, and we want to organize our data with graphs so we get a visual, and we like bar graphs and histograms the best. All right, I'll see you in the next video.